Okay, let's get started. Again, welcome to the webinar. This is our GAP 2.0 presentation. My name is George Lose. I work here at OptiMed Health Plans, United Group Programs. And the focus of our webinar today is going to be sales strategies as it pertains to GAP. There is a question bar that you can type in questions to. I'll try to answer some questions at the end of the presentation if you have any. But let's kind of just dig in, right? So in case you missed the first webinar presentation, we'll go over a little bit about what is GAP, just as kind of like a refresher. And then we have like 7 sales different strategies that you can kind of utilize to market GAP. And then we'll go into OptiMed a little bit. We went into OptiMed in the first presentation if you were available for that. But we'll go in a little bit about OptiMed and how to file claims for the GAP. So what is GAP? Like a refresher on it, right? So what it is, some people call it primary insurance. Some call it or refer to it as a fully insured HRA. But essentially, what is medical GAP? It insures deductible and coinsurance as it applies to a group major medical program. And what it's designed to do is to save your employer groups money by having them select lower premium, lower cost major medical programs than what they currently have right now, and then fill in the void, the hole that you're creating for the employee with the GAP program. So that hopefully the GAP premium and your new major medical premium that has these high deductibles will be less than what you're currently paying right now as an employer. So therefore, it can be a win-win for everyone involved. The employer can go ahead and save direct premium costs on their medical. The employees now have, GAP insurance to insure their deductible coinsurance, their out-of-pocket expenses that you've now created, at least increased on this major medical plan. You've come in as a broker and filled in that hole, that void for the employee, so they should be happy. And brokers typically make additional commission because you're making commission on the GAP. So normally your commissions will increase somewhere between 10 to 50% on that same group from year to year. So meaning if you made $10,000 in commissions on X group last year, by implementing the GAP group strategy, that similar group, that same exact group should net you somewhere between $11,000 to $15,000 in commission in year 2. And that's because we pay commission on the GAP. So it's a win-win for everyone. You as the employer group can save money. You as the employee win by getting deductible and coinsurance coverage, out-of-pocket expense coverage, and the broker wins because they make additional commissions on the group. So what we don't want you to think about it is like an afterthought or like an indemnity, fixed indemnity type program where you get $100 per day for hospital confinement. That's not the way this works. What we're trying to do is take 2 policies, A and B, and combine them together to make them better than what they currently have. So I'm going to take an awful major medical program, like a D-level major medical program, marry it to this A GAP program, that covers deductible coinsurance and co-pays as it applies to that major medical program. And together, those 2 equal a solid B, B plus, A, depending on how much you're gapping, how much are you filling in the hole for the employee. You can fill in the entire hole sometimes. You can fill in part of the hole that you're creating. It all depends on what you want to do. We can have first dollar coverage or have a deductible on the GAP program. So therefore, employees that have $1,000 deductible, let's just say today, and you come in with a $4,000 major medical program that has a deductible of $4,000, and you fill that in with a $4,000 inpatient benefit. Well, if that person goes for an inpatient hospital stay, on their plan before they would have owed $1,000, but now that you've moved them to this new major medical program that has a $4,000 deductible, they owe $4,000. Well, if you have a GAP inpatient benefit of $4,000, we're going to cover that bill entirely so that the employee would owe nothing out of pocket for that inpatient hospitalization stay. So therefore, is that better or worse than the old plan? Seems like it's better to me. I would rather owe nothing than something. So a lot of times you're making the plan because we're on a first dollar basis, and that's why first dollar is important, I believe, and making everybody happy, really makes the gap plan work. So that's kind of like the overview, right? So why gap now, right? Well, you have the push to high deductible health plans, right? And where I don't see, and I've talked about this a little bit in the previous presentation, what I don't see is employer groups, or I should say carriers, moving to lower deductible health plans, right? Meaning they're not going to change course and all of a sudden offer you great rates on this $500 deductible, $10 copay plan. The copay is going to be the way of the dodo in a little while, right? And the sooner you kind of, and brokers and groups and everybody involved realizes that these like $10 copays for office visits are not going to exist. I mean, you're talking about next year, $7,900 is the maximum out of pocket. I mean, at what point in time do we get to 10,000? Is that 2020, 2021? Where your maximum out of pocket is going to be $10,000. So I don't see where the trend's going to all of a sudden reverse course and we're going to go back to maximum out of pockets of $1,000 with $10 copays. I just don't see it. The push is to go to higher deductible health plans that are cheaper, but therefore groups have to come up and figure out ways of how to fill in this co-insurance deductible copay holes that, you know, are increasing every year. Well, I'll go from a $10 copay to a $20 copay, a $20 copay to a $40 copay, right? With GAP, what we're doing is a different strategy. You know, already you're talking about 43% of consumers can't afford their deductible or out-of-pocket expenses, right? So having GAP is more important than ever before. And the reason why it's so important is that when an employee or a person, regardless, asks or thinks about what a major medical plan looks like, right? I would assume that the average person would think that it looks like, you know, something that covers my doctor office visits. If I needed to go get a test like an MRI, it would be covered. And, you know, I wouldn't owe an arm and a leg if I needed to have a, you know, a maternity stay, if I became pregnant or my wife became pregnant, and I wouldn't have to go to the hospital and owe $5,000 to have my child. That's what they're going to think about, right, when they think about a major medical program. But in today's reality, that's not what a major medical program is a lot of times. It's, if you have a child, you might owe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. If you need an MRI, that might be subjected to your deductible now. You go to the emergency room, that might be subjected to your deductible, where you get hit with a $2,000, $3,000 bill for that visit. So more and more employees are being left out to dry, per se, because the push towards higher deductibles puts more of an onus on the employee, right? So what we're trying to do is make the employees happy. Again, make it a win-win for everybody. And yes, you have solutions like, well, I usually go in with an HSA or I go in with an HRA. This is just a different concept and a way of looking at it from a different approach into how, and you're going to have to, in today's market, over the next several years, you're going to have to figure out a strategy as a broker as to how am I going to, you know, make these plans to where employees want to enroll in them. Because once we get to the point of $10,000 deductibles and $10,000 max out of pockets, I mean, you're talking about an individual that has a hospitalization stay, maybe owing 10 grand. Everything that employee does, and let's say that employee makes $50,000 a year. $10,000 is what, 25% or 20% of their income? When you factor in its after taxes, it's more like 25 to 30% of their income. And that's in addition to the premiums that they're paying for this through their employee contribution to the plan. So at what point in time do employees go, this isn't even worth it for me to enroll? So GAP is so important in today's marketplace because that trend to higher deductible health plans is, in my opinion, not going to reverse course. And if you think it is, then that's great. Maybe this isn't the most viable solution for you. But the reality is, and I think most would agree with me, in that it's not going to trend the other way. Blue Cross and Blue Shield are not going to start offering you phenomenal rates on a $10 copay, $500 deductible plan. They basically don't even exist anymore almost in a lot of places. So how do you get back to those rich benefits, right, without breaking the employer's bank? And that's what GAP is designed to do. So obviously, ideal groups are going to be groups that have received a significant increase at renewal. They're looking to control, obviously, their healthcare costs, but essentially prospects, right? They're not your client. What is your differentiator? Why should I move from broker A to broker B? Why would I do that? Broker B is just going to come in with the same solutions that broker A came in with and just promising better service. I'll HRA it, or I'll HSA it, or I'll switch it from Blue to Aetna, UHC to Kaiser, whatever. So what this is designed to do is to give you an advantage, so that if it's not your group, you go in with a different and creative solution that can save the group money on their premium costs and provide their employees better or equal to the benefits that they were offering before. Now you've proven your value to that new prospect. So it's a great tool to try to win business, and brokers have been very successful. The ones who have really wrapped their arms around this have really been successful in selling this platform of GAP, right? Because employers are looking for creative alternatives. They're looking for solutions. They don't want their healthcare costs to be continuing every single year to be a double-digit increase. So obviously, you know, we're talking about the groups that are receiving rate increases as well as groups that even aren't. It doesn't matter. They're still going to want to contain costs. So GAP is still a good solution. So sales strategies, right? We've come up with 7. And essentially, some of them are, we'll give you some examples of, you know, how to do it. But these are like your 7 kind of core strategies on how to sell GAP, right? So number 1, so like we said, you go to a high deductible health plan and you add GAP, right? 2, you offer GAP as a voluntary option, even though it's really not a voluntary product, and we'll get into a little bit about that. Offer an employer paid GAP, like a base buy-up type situation. You can include a GAP with an HRA or HSA, which we'll get into. Now, what more often happens is that we replace the HRA or HSA with a GAP program. You add an HDHP with RX subjected to deductible, and essentially how you find money to pay for the GAP premium for the employer, right? So when we talk about our groups, most of the groups that I would say we receive here at OptiMed, the vast majority of them, we get the entire group. It's not a voluntary product. So if there's 20 people in the group, we're getting all 20. It's rolled out as a combination, right? Now, occasionally an employer doesn't want to, you know, doesn't really care a whole lot about their employees, or maybe just doesn't have the money to fund the GAP program, which is why we talk about voluntary options. But these are like our 7 core kind of, you know, sales strategies. So we're going to go over them. So 1, obviously, right? You want to review the major medical plan, right? So what you want to do is take a look at it from the standpoint of, you know, what is the deductible, what's the coinsurance, what's the copays that they currently have right now? And then what can I find on the marketplace that's cheaper, right? Whether it's a different carrier or the same carrier, it doesn't matter. But can I find a cheaper alternative, right, to this major medical plan that they have right now, okay? So whether that's a $2,000 deductible with coinsurance that takes it to a max out of pocket of $4,000 with $30 office visit copays, okay. Now go out and shop around and try to find something that has a higher deductible, $6,350 or $7,350. You know, more like a bronze program, an HDHP, where you're, you know, or essentially anything that's higher, right? As far as a high deductible health plan, it doesn't have to be just deductible. We cover deductible, coinsurance, and copays, certain copays. The copays that we'll never cover, just so you know, are RX and office visits, physician office visits. So those are 2 things that we would never cover as far as copays, but an emergency room copay, a whatchamacallit, diagnostic test like an MRI copay, are eligible expenses under the GAP programs. So you can go to, let's say, a plan that has a $100 emergency room visit copay. Yeah, you can find a plan that instead of a $4,000 off deductible has a $6,000 deductible and has a $500 emergency room copay or $250, and has no copays for office visits, because we will cover office visits if they're subjected to deductible, just not a copay. So now you got this cheaper plan that you're filling in with gap, right? And so therefore, if you go with, let's say you go to a $5,000 deductible with this new plan, $5,000 deductible, 100% thereafter. And office visits are subjected to deductible, and ER visits are subjected to deductible, you know, okay. If that's cheaper, then we can come in and fill in that hole, that void you created for the employee. Because now instead of a $4,000 deductible with a max out of pocket of $5,000, they got a $5,000 straight deductible, right? Well, the good news is that our gap program is going to cover the office visit. So before you had a $30 copay, now you have no copay, and OptiMed is going to cover your office visits at 100% because they're subjected to deductible. That's better. Before you had a copay of $100 for emergency room visits. Well, since they're now subjected to deductible, well, it wouldn't matter copay or deductible, but on this new $5,000 plan, they're subjected to deductible. We're going to cover that under the OptiMed gap program. So you won't owe that $100 copay. All sounds better to me so far. It's because I've avoided my office visit copays, and if I have to go to the emergency room, I don't get slapped with a $100 copay. Sounds better to me. And your deductible is $5,000 compared to $4,000 on the last one, but OptiMed is covering most of that. Okay. And if those two plans, the OptiMed gap program and that new major medical plan that you found, are cheaper when you add the premiums together, if that's a cheaper option than what they have currently, why wouldn't you do it, right? And that's the question I ask every broker. Why wouldn't you? It makes perfect sense to any reasonable human being. If I was an employee and I was given two options, A, here's a $4,000 deductible with a max out of pocket of $5,000 with copays, or B, a $5,000 deductible, but you owe nothing as far as copays are concerned because it's subjected to deductible, but this gap program picks up the out-of-pocket expenses for you, so you don't have to worry about anything. I don't know, I guess I'll take the $5,000 one that I don't have to put any money out of pocket for. The other one I got to put money out of pocket for? Yeah, okay, I'll take the other option. So why aren't you as brokers doing that and taking a look at every situation? Now, sometimes the reason why this isn't going to work, right, is that you can't find the spread. So here's an example, like where they could find spread. They had a $1,000 deductible plan for this 150 employee group, right? That was costing them $1.1 million about. So the broker went out and found an HDHP plan with a $5,000 deductible that had premiums of about $700,000. And this is a real life group. So what we did was we came in and we filled that in with a $5,000 inpatient benefit and a $2,500 outpatient benefit for about $175,000. So when you added the new premium of $695 to the OptiMed premium of about $175, the annual savings on that group was $259,000. So great, that employer just saved $250,000 to this 150 life group just by simply implementing an OptiMed gap program. Then you say, well, now, oh, but the employees might be left out to dry. No, because they have a $5,000 deductible, they have a $5,000 inpatient benefit. So now, on their old plan, if they were hospitalized, so they had a maternity claim, you owe $1,000 for that maternity stay. With the OptiMed gap plan, you'll owe nothing because we're going to get an EOB that says you owe $5,000, and you have an inpatient benefit that says you get $5,000. So therefore, we're going to pay our entire benefit. You've exhausted your inpatient benefit for the year, and we're going to pay that $5,000 bill. So the employee owes nothing. Again, to me, that sounds better than owing something. Owing nothing sounds better than owing something. So I'd rather not pay $1,000 in deductible towards my maternity stay rather than pay $0 towards my maternity stay. So then you say, what about the outpatient benefits, right? You had a $1,000 deductible before. Yeah. Now I'm going to pick up the next $2,500 of your outpatient expenses, which includes your doctor office visits, which under the old plan had copays. No more copays. I'm going to pick up your MRIs. You used to have a copay for that. No more copays. And I'm going to pick up $2,500 worth of the first dollars of expenses for that. So unless you need more than $2,500 annually in medical expense, which the average person probably spends about, I think the studies that have been done show that they spend about $2,000 to $2,500 a year is the annual spend for an average individual on health insurance, or I should say health costs, out-of-pocket expenses. So if that's the case, then 2,500 should be plenty. And if the average office visit's about $100, you have 25 office visits there before you'd have to put anything out of your pocket. You know, even if you needed to get an MRI and go to the doctor a few times, $2,500 might cut it for everything, depending on where you're going and the kind of discounts you're getting. So therefore, what are you doing? You're penalizing the bad utilizers, the people that have outpatient expenses that are over and above $2,500 annually. So yeah, you'll be left with a $2,500 back hole. But all the good utilizers that utilize less than $2,500 annually in outpatient expense, you'll owe nothing out of pocket. If you have a heart attack, or you need you need a maternity stay, or you're hospitalized, essentially, you'll owe nothing. We'll make sure that you don't get devastated by the cost of that. So really, what are you doing? You're penalizing the person that needs an outpatient surgery, and you're not really penalizing them. I mean, you're taking them from a $1,000 upfront deductible to a $2,500 out of pocket on the back end. Again, I'd rather have a $2,500 back end out of pocket, unless I knew I needed a surgery or something like that, maybe. But for the vast majority of these 150 people, this was a better plan. For the high utilizers on outpatient services, yeah, maybe it was a little worse. But then again, they should have a little bit more skin in the game anyway, because they are the high utilizers driving the premium costs for the group. So they should shoulder a little bit more out-of-pocket expense than a good utilizer that only maybe uses about $500 and maybe goes to the doctors a few times, gets some tests done. That's it. So this is the strategy in action. I mean, this was a real-life group that we got, and this group was ecstatic to save $250,000. The employees are happy, and the broker is going to make more commission on this group than what he made the year before, because of the fact that we're paying commissions on that gap premium. So when you add it all up, that broker probably made more money on this group. So the broker made more money, the group saved $250,000, and the employees now have better coverage, the vast majority of them in that group, and less out of pocket for the vast majority of that group. So that's strategy one. Strategy two is offer a voluntary option. And where we see this come into play would be where you're talking to a group that really, like I said, doesn't care a whole lot about their employees, or maybe just doesn't have the budget, right? I just don't have the money, period, end of story. You know, like I offer an HSA plan with a 7350 max, because that's the max I can do, and that's the cheapest plan that I can find. And I contribute the least amount of money that is required by me, by the carrier. And I don't care if employees enroll in it or not, because I don't really value the employees all that much. And there are groups like that, right? So would GAP be a great solution for that employer group? Yeah, because there might be people that are faced with the 7350 out-of-pocket max. They're looking for something that is not a critical illness plan. So yeah, if I have an accident, I go to the emergency room, I won't owe much. But you know, or a critical illness cancer type policy, well, yeah, that'll help. But what about, I just was working in my backyard and got hurt, right? Broke my leg skiing. What happens to those people that go to the emergency room, right? Okay, we have an accident policy. Great. That'll help pick up that out-of-pocket expense. But what about the person that's just not feeling well? It's illness. I don't feel well. I need to go to the emergency room. I think I'm having a heart attack. I'm not really having a heart attack. It was just something that, you know, they send you home with Pepto-Bismol 2 hours later because it's indigestion, but that employee gets a $2,000 bill in the mail for that, you know, emergency room visit, right? So what we're trying to do is give those employees that would normally buy those types of voluntary products, accident plans, critical illness, a plan that, yes, is most likely going to be more expensive than those, right? Because they're covering more. They're going to cover things like your office visits. They're going to cover your strep throat tests and labs and MRIs, whether it's an injury or a sickness. It's going to cover the emergency room visit, regardless if you're, you know, in an accident or if it's sickness. It's going to cover your hospital confinement, not $200 per day, right, up to like 5 days. It's going to actually pay whatever the benefit, it pays off the EOB. So if the EOB says you owe $5,000 for that in-hospitalization stay, and you have a $2,000 inpatient benefit up with us, we'll pay $2,000 towards that $5,000. You got a $5,000, we'll pay $5,000 towards that $5,000, whatever your inpatient amount is. So therefore, it works better for most employees that are going to not have particular situations like being diagnosed with cancer and needing treatment, or having an accident and going to the emergency room. It's just a better product overall than those, right? Because it's so limited. So that's where we see voluntary offerings most often, is in those situations. Like I said, even if it's not going to be, and we'll talk about like employer paid gap, right? And that's the next sales strategy, is getting the employer to really pay for the gap plan, right? Now, normally what we mean by that is like either doing one of two things. Normally it means doing a base buy-up, meaning that the employer will select, like, for example, an inpatient only, because we don't have to have outpatient benefits. It can just be an inpatient only plan. So let's say, for example, it's an inpatient only. So it's an inpatient benefit of $1,000. That's going to be relatively inexpensive compared to like a $5,000, $2,500 that has outpatient services, or outpatient benefits, I should say. And the reason being is that's where the exposure is in the outpatient benefit for the carrier. So yeah, at a group of 100, how many are going to have hospital confinement? You know, one or two. You get an oddball group, maybe 5 or 6, 7. But realistically, you shouldn't have too many inpatient hospital stays, right? Where the expense really comes in is covering things like office visits and lab and everything else that the employee is getting done on an outpatient basis, and more is being done on an outpatient basis. So there's really where the liability comes in. But the employer could say, listen, if you do an inpatient only benefit of like $2,000, I can afford that. Like that I can fit into my budget. So I'll give everybody in the group that, $2,000 inpatient only plan for free, so to speak. And then if they want to voluntarily buy up to the $5,000, $2,500 plan, they can pay the difference in the premium themselves. And the thing about it is, if a few employees want to buy up, great. If none want to buy up, no problem. Everybody's still getting that $2,000 inpatient only that the employer is paying for. You can also do it, and you don't have to do it inpatient only. That would be the cheapest way of doing it. You could go with like just a straight, with something with outpatient benefits, like $1,500, right? $1,000 inpatient benefit with a $500 outpatient benefit. Going to be a little bit more expensive because now you're covering outpatient services up to $500. But, maybe the employer's got a little bit more money that he can throw at the situation. And then he or she says, okay, I'll do that. I want to have some coverage for outpatient as well. And then again, the concept is having the employees buy up to the $5,000, $2,500. So it's going to save the employer money again because there's going to be a cheaper gap plan. So if you don't have the spread, and that's really what gap is about when we're talking about some of these strategies, is finding the spread, right? If the premium on the current plan is, let's say, $500 a month, if you can find a plan for $400, well, you've got a nice spread of $100 in there that you're saving on an employee-only rate. So I got a decent spread in there. I can throw a gap plan in there, make this plan just as good as this plan, and save the group some money. That's the concept. But now, let's say you don't have a ton of spread. Let's say, it's 500 and the best thing you can find is 450. Well, I don't have a lot of spread now. So this is this is like something that typically brokers will do, is go in and try to find the lowest cost inpatient only plan that they can get into the group to help cover some of that, and then have a voluntary buy-up option. But that's really not the employer-paid portion of the gap strategy. Is really what we call base buy-up. And if you're going to do a base buy-up with us, just remember the employer has to pay 100% of the base plan for the employee only at least, and then they can offer the voluntary buy-up if you're going to do 2 plans. Strategy number 4. Include a gap plan with an HRA and an HSA. So you could have a group right now that has a health savings account plan, HSA compatible plan, and they might want to keep their HSA. But since the employees can only put a certain amount of money in per year, essentially what happens if I have a $73.50 out-of-pocket HSA plan, but I'm only allowed to put $34.50 into the actual health savings account itself? What happens if I get hit with an inpatient hospital stay and I get hit with a $7,000 bill? What happens? Well, now you're going to have to pay that money out of pocket on an after-tax basis. Well, you can implement a GAP program with an HSA and make the GAP HSA compatible by putting a $13.50 deductible up front. And as long as the GAP doesn't pay any benefits until the employee reaches $13.50 in eligible expense with us, we can go ahead and put a GAP plan in there with the HSA. So essentially, the employee would pay for the first $13.50 of expenses, and then the GAP would pick stuff up after that, right? So they would put money into their health savings account to cover that $13.50 every year, and then the GAP program is going to cover. So if you get hospitalized, don't worry about it. We have a GAP benefit that will cover the remainder of what you owe, so that you only have to worry about $13.50. So the problem with HSA is that most people don't fund their HSA because they really don't have, quote unquote, the lack of disposable income to put into the health savings account on a monthly basis. I live paycheck to paycheck. Dumping $100 into my HSA every paycheck, in order to fund it, I just don't have. That's my cell phone bill. That's my cable bill. I don't have that. So what that does is allow the employee to not have to fund as much, right? You only have to fund the first $13.50, and then you don't have to worry about it. And they can put that into a pre-tax arrangement. So now you're talking about $100 a month, not $100 a paycheck. And that's if they want to fully fund it. They could fund a portion of it, put $50 in, and if they don't think they're going to incur a lot of expenses this year, not worry about it. Let it roll over to year two, and then put another $50, and now I got my $13.50 in there. Now with HRAs, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll be the first dollar portion of the GAP. So for example, I want an HRA $4,000 of deductible. Employer groups will say, okay, I want OptiMed to do a 4,000, 2,000 plan, meaning I want a 4,000 inpatient benefit with a $2,000 outpatient benefit, and then I'll HRA the other $2,000 in outpatient so that the employee is whole. I don't want the employee to have to spend any money out of pocket, so I'm going to have the GAP plan pick up $4,000 in inpatient expense so that the deductible is met if they're inpatient. And on outpatient, OptiMed will pick up the first $2,000, and then I'll pick up the second $2,000. Or because GAP doesn't cover things like RX or office visit copays, dental vision, whatever the case may be, they'll set up an HRA so that they can cover things that the GAP would not cover. So, it excludes RX. Well, I want to cover RX for the employee, so they can submit reimbursement to OptiMed, for their HRA for scripts, or set it up with someone else. So you can use GAP in conjunction with your health savings account and with your HRAs that you're selling. And OptiMed can administrate the HRA if you would like to, as well as the GAP at the same time. That's really the concept, is the GAP. When it comes to HSAs, it's that I got a group that, like for example, I always use, if you run into a, small engineering firm where everybody's making a ton of money and essentially putting $3,000 into your health savings account, they look at that as a tax savings vehicle, not as trying to cover my out-of-pocket expenses. I just want to lower my taxes, so I'm going to put $3,000 in my HSA and just keep rolling it over. Well, yeah, that group's probably not the greatest group, right, for GAP. But when you run into a group that has an HSA, but they have an HSA because that's what they can afford, you're going to have employees that are going to say, or they're moving to an HSA because that's all they can afford. You're going to have these members, these employees that are going to hate this health savings account. And a lot of people, especially people that are used to copay plans, you roll them to an HSA account and they hate it. And especially when somebody goes in and has a hospitalization and stay or something like that, and they're on that HSA plan and they're whacked with some gigantic bill that they wouldn't have been hit with before. And then they tell this person at the group and then that person, and how the insurance is terrible, and it all goes around, and then there you got, everybody's got pitchforks and fire outside the HR's door going, oh, I hate this HSA account. So this is a way to either, use an HSA in conjunction with GAAP to cover those big ticket items so that doesn't happen. And with HRAs, it's a way of mitigating utilization to the HRA in that we're picking up the first dollars, the HRA is not. They're going to be on the back end. So therefore, since the HRA is on the back end, the HRA doesn't get many claims. It's only people that use more than $2,000 in outpatient expense. And again, in an average group, how many people are going to go over 2,000 when the average spend is about 2? So most of the time the HRA doesn't get touched, or if it gets hit once in a while. So it's making that a group that wants to make that employee whole. I want a 4,000, all across the board. We have that availability to do something like that. So this is an example where we had a group that had a $1,500, deductible plan. They moved to a $3,000. They kept the HRA, and they put in an employer paid gap program of $1,500, so that we would suck up the first $1,500 of expense, and then the HRA would pick up the back end. So number 5, replacing an HRA or HSA with GAAP, which is more often what happens. And the reason why you replace it, especially in the small group marketplace, is that a lot of groups will like the concept of an HRA, but they don't like the exposure of an HRA, or the fluctuation of having to fund claims and not knowing how much you're going to have to fund month to month to month, or being put on a schedule, right? So this way, you can walk into a group and have the exact same strategy as an HRA, but with no risk. Because when you're paying GAAP, you're paying GAAP premium. You're not paying claims. The carrier's paying, or your policy's paying those claims. OptiMed is. You as the employer are not funding claims. You're just paying premium. And since that premium can be split between employer and employee, you're not even funding the entire premium a lot of times. So therefore, I can go into a group and say, hey, you love an HRA concept? Yes, but I don't like the fact that I could owe $2,000 this month, and the next month owe nothing, and the following month owe nothing, and having to pony up $4,000 4 months from now, and then I don't like that fluctuation. And what happens if everybody maxes out the HRA? That's a lot of money. I don't, because you're going to have to show them what the worst case scenario is for that HRA. So what if you didn't have to show them a worst case scenario? All you had to do is show them a fixed amount of money, premium. Employee only rate of $50, family rate of $100. Here you go. That's what your HRA is going to cost you, premium-wise. And whether your employees utilize it, or they don't utilize it or don't utilize it, guess what? That amount of money is not going to change for the next 12 months. You're going to be paying $50 a month for employee only rate, $100 for family. Sign here. So we replace HRAs most often, and especially in that small group arena, from the 5 lives, because that's our minimum write down to. We can write down the 5 lives. So that 5 life case up to about 500, 1,000. We usually crush it in that marketplace with GAAP. And the reason why we crush it is exactly that reason. A broker can feel safe to walk in with an HRA concept and not have to explain worst case scenarios and administration, and then you have to find an HRA administrator, so they don't work for free. So you're going to have to pay a PEPM every month for the HRA, and then you're going to have to fund it. And then here's your worst case scenario. All you have to say is, listen, I'm moving you to this $5,000 HDHP plan. This gap plan fills in the deductible hole this way. This is what some examples. Boom, you're off. And this is how much it costs. It's a fixed cost because it's premium. So therefore, it's been phenomenal in that we have, and that's why we call it kind of like a fully insured HRA, is that that's really what GAAP is. It's reimbursing out-of-pocket expenses as it applies to the major medical program, just like an HRA would. Only instead of a swipe card, you're going to get a GAAP card. Now, a gap card's not a swipe card, and we'll go into how to access benefits at the end, just in case anybody missed presentation 1. But just like you have an HRA card, you'll have a gap card. And benefits are assignable, so you should normally never have a problem. So therefore, any group that you have an HRA with, especially if they have high utilization to the HRA, they're running like 40, 50, 60%, great candidates for gap. Why would the employer continue down that trend if they can just put a fully insured gap plan in there, and whether the employees use it or not, they're going to pay X amount a month? Sounds a lot easier to manage. Now, when it comes to HSAs, a lot of times when you're running into those employer groups that are going to the HSA model, but that's basically what they can afford, or they go, well, we'll go into an HSA and we're going to put $100 a month into the health savings accounts for the employees. Well, why would you do that if you can buy insurance and give the employees good coverage medically, right, with a gap program, and either making it HSA compliant or replacing the HSA with the gap? Because gap is not HSA compliant per se. It becomes compliant when you throw a $1,350 deductible in there, but if it's first dollar coverage, it's not. And the reason being, it's an IRS rule, not an insurance rule, where the IRS considers that double dipping, to where you got first dollar coverage and are having all your medical expenses paid for by this, insurance policy, and then throwing money into your health savings account. They look at that as a tax deferment, like you're using it as a tax savings vehicle. You get to roll it over. So when you're talking about an HSA plan and gap, yes. Can we make it compatible? Yes, with a $1,350 deductible. Can we sell a first dollar gap with an HSA plan design? Yes. And the thing about it is, you have an HSA plan design with a gap with no health savings account. You eliminate the health savings account. And normally what we do is just ask the group to write like an email letter stating that they will not open or contribute to any employees' HSA accounts. That's something simple to that effect. And this way we know the group's not going to open it up and cause problems. So therefore, if the group understands that they can't open it up and cause problems, then it never is a problem. So you can do it. And it's a good strategy for those groups that really are not well-paid employees. They're, essentially they're not going to have the money to dump into a health savings account, or an employer that, is dumping money into a health savings account where they could be buying insurance for their employees instead, which would be way more valuable to them. So this is just a comparison, of contributions, HSA monthly for a group, where, we were taking a look at if they had, and this is a smaller group, obviously, contributing, for employee spouse, $2,500, employee only, $1,500 into their HSA, and what a $4,000, $2,000 gap plan cost them. So they were dumping almost $33,000 annually into the health savings accounts for their employees on an annual basis, where they could have bought a $4,000 inpatient with a $2,000 outpatient benefit for $23,000, $10,000 less. So when we're talking about gap, that's the power of gap. Spend $10,000 less annually, and with your buying power, now you've bought $4,000 in first dollar benefits towards inpatient hospitalization stays, and you bought $2,000 worth of doctor office visits, lab, outpatient expenses for the year. And just get rid of the health savings account and have the employees, if they go over that, pay it on an after-tax basis. Because again, most people aren't going to go over $2,000 anyway and spend. So for the vast majority of this group, they're probably going to be very happy with having the $4,000, $2,000 plan, compared to having money dumped into their health savings account every month that they have to accumulate in order to use. So sales strategy number 6 is adding an HDHP with RX subjected to deductible, meaning essentially an HSA plan. But when we're talking about this, we have gap programs that can cover RX in certain states. And if you can do that, if you're in a state that has that availability, we can cover generic and brand out of the gap program, meaning if it's a 4,000, 2,000, and let's say you went for a generic drug and it's subjected to deductible and it's $20 at the pharmacy, the outpatient benefit would cover that $20. If it was a brand name drug and it was $300, we would pay that $300 out of your $2,000 outpatient benefit. Now, again, that's only available in certain states, but it is an option now where we can cover not only medical expenses, but deductible if it applies to RX. Again, we'll never cover a copay for RX, and nor would we do that with this program, but you can do it if it's subjected to deductible. So that's another sales strategy you can look at if that option's available for you, to where you can go to an HSA plan and then gap everything except for your only exclusions that you would have. The only reason a member would have out-of-pocket expense on those plans would be for in-home health care. And the reason why it's not being done at a licensed facility, and by definition, in order for the gap benefits to pay, you have to go to a licensed facility and see a licensed doctor. So essentially that would eliminate in-home health care. So medically speaking, you could have zero out-of-pocket. So you could have, let me backtrack, you could have a major medical plan with a $7,350 out-of-pocket max HSA plan design that essentially medically the employee would have no out-of-pocket unless it was in-home health care. And the only way they would have out-of-pocket for drugs would be if it's a specialty or compounding drug, because we don't cover those two. So now if I can take the cheapest HSA plan that I can find and marry it to that gap program and see what the rates are, can you find, I mean, my question to you is, can you find a medical plan out there that has zero out-of-pocket? Number one, no. Medically, no. I don't see them anymore. I don't see any zero deductible plans. If you still have them in your area, I haven't seen them. So number one, you can't even find those plans for the most part. Number two, especially when you're talking about drugs, having zero out-of-pocket for drugs unless it's specialty drugs. And again, how many people out of a group of 100 are going to have need for specialty drugs? 1, 2 during the course of the year, right? But again, if you're getting a specialty drug, normally that means something happened to you. You have a medical diagnosis that you're getting treatment for, that probably the GAP program is picking up a lot of your medical expenses. And then when you have to move to this specialty drug, because we've picked up the cost of all these medical expenses, that specialty drug shouldn't be it should be less expensive because you've met a certain portion of your deductible. And let's face it, those people were going to be the high utilizers anyway. So if you had them on a $3,000 deductible plan, they were probably going to hit their $3,000 deductible for the year. So you're really not punishing anybody. Those are the people that would have had a lot of out-of-pocket expense ever anyway. So with this concept, you can take the worst HSA plan, marry it to a GAP program, and take the employee out-of-pocket to zero unless they have an in-home healthcare situation, which if they're employed, they shouldn't. It might be a spouse or a dependent that has it. But again, how many people in a group of 100 have that? And then two, specialty drugs and compounding drugs that we wouldn't cover, they would have to put out of pocket for. And if that plan, our GAP plan plus that HSA premium is 50% less or 25% less or 30% less than what the group is paying currently right now, again, why wouldn't you do it? It makes no sense not to do it. So that's the RX portion of it. 7 is really finding the money to pay for the GAP program. And what you really want to do is take a look at the overall benefit strategy. A lot of times there'll be dental, vision, these voluntary benefits that, you know, an employer is contributing to, that GAP would be way more beneficial to that member, that employee, than basically a dental and vision plan, especially vision, where, you know, they might be able to just go get an eye exam and pay for it out of pocket. Would they rather pay for an eye exam out of pocket, or would they rather pay for an MRI out of pocket, right? So when it comes to like things like dental and vision, you might be able to take and say, hey, you're going to have to pay for your dental and vision plan, but we made your medical plan better with GAAP. Me as an employee, I would look at that in a very favorable fashion, because dental and vision programs aren't that expensive normally. They're usually cheaper. So if you have an employer group that's paying for those things, why not move and shift that contribution into the GAAP and away from the dental and vision? So there's different ways to try to find the money, but really it's trying to find the spread is really what you're trying to find. You really want to take a group, take a look at a premium of whatever they got now, and it's really like 4 boxes. Like, what is the deductible? What is the coinsurance? What are the, what's the out-of-pocket max? And then looking at how copays work on the plan. Is it a $20 office visit copay? Do they have advanced diagnostic copays? Do they have copays for hospitalization? Let's see those. What kind of copays are they working with? Okay. Now I'm going to go to this plan where all these things are subjected to deductible and it has a higher out-of-pocket max. And let me see how the GAAP plan would fill in those holes. And if I can make the GAAP and the major medical plan work better, then why not, right? Just makes sense. So that's kind of like the sales strategies. I'm going to go over a little bit about who we are, just in case anybody missed the first go around. But we are a third-party administrator. We work with multiple different carrier partners to bring you fully insured products, and we do some self-insured products. But we mostly market GAAP as our #1 product by far. So we do GAAP programs. We do limited benefit programs, MEC, minimum essential coverage programs. We do level-funded major medical. Right now we do larger groups, but we're going to have products in the future where we'll be able to do small group, and when those roll out, we'll let you know. But we also have things like critical illness, accident policies, vision, dental, stuff like that. But what we've focused on is more like typical TPAs focus on the self-funded aspects of, administrating benefits for self-funded major medical programs. We kind of went in a different direction and really focused our attention on marketing and administrating fully insured programs for other carriers who essentially don't have the manpower or the time to go ahead and market it and administrate it themselves. They come to experts like us who have already done it in the marketplace and have been successful with it for years. I mean, this is 40 or 50 years of being in business now. So we understand how to market and administrate these programs, which is key. So how does the GAAP plan work as far as getting your benefits if you're an employee? It's very simple. Like I said, you get a card. And then on your screen is an example of what the card looks like. And you're going to hand that card, if you're an employee and have GAAP with us, you're going to hand that card to your provider when you hand them your major medical card. About 80%, I would believe, I think is the number right now, about 80% of our claims are submitted by providers. If the provider is unwilling to file the claim, because you can't force the provider to accept assignment of benefits, and most often where we see it is when you go to a, primary care physician that doesn't understand, maybe the spouse still does the books, doesn't understand how to file to a secondary insurer is where it most happens. Your like larger lab, facilities and freestanding like surgical centers or ones that are attached to hospitals, urgent care facilities are used to secondary insurance. I mean, millions of Americans have secondary insurance. They're called senior citizens, and they have a thing called Medicare, and they have a Medicare supplement policy. And my grandma, when she walks into her doctor's office, hands in her Medicare card and hands in her Medicare supplement card. And it's the exact same concept that's just being brought into the group health marketplace, right? And why? Because we're looking at $7,900 out-of-pocket maxes next year, right? The reason why Medicare supplement became such a popular vehicle or popular product was because Medicare had all these holes. So how do we fill? We want Medicare supplement policies to fill in all these Medicare holes. Well, guess what? Now major meds like that, you got a $7,900 hole. How am I going to fill that $7,900 hole to where the normal employee that wants to use their benefits doesn't have to pay a fortune out of their pocket? This is it. They hand in their card, the provider bills us, we pay the provider. It's easy. Now, obviously, there's going to be, like I said, there's ones that the provider doesn't bill to us. So they can go to our website, optimedhealth.com. They can go to member services. They can click on our claim form, and they can actually upload their EOB, because we need your explanation of benefits. Because again, we're not a fixed indemnity product. We're not paying $1,000 towards an outpatient service like a strep throat test that costs $10. It's like an HRA. It's a bucket of money where we're reimbursing, right? So we need to know what your out-of-pocket expense was from your major medical carrier. So they'll submit their EOB, that'll tell us what they owe, and then we'll pay the benefit out of either the inpatient or outpatient, depending on where they stay, up to the maximum benefit amount. But our customer service is one of the things that I'm very proud of in working for this company, because they do a very good job in customer service. 80% of our calls are answered within 30 seconds. And you don't get a million prompts when you call into OptiMed. I mean, I think there's like 5. You hit 1 or 2 for customer service, hit 4 for sales, hit 5 for billing, once you hit that, then your next prompt is, if you're calling into customer service, are you calling about your MEC program? Are you calling about your GAP program? Are you calling about your limited medical program? And then you're into a customer service person who can actually walk you through and explain your coverage and how to file a claim to us in case the provider didn't. So I'm very happy with our customer service and our claims adjudicators. They do a phenomenal job of processing claims. And here's the other thing that really sets us apart in the marketplace with GAP is that if we get the EOB and there's not enough information or missing information, for example, a diagnosis code, a CPT code, that might not be on that EOB that we need in order to process the claim, we do this very simple thing, and we just pick up the phone and we call the provider and we get the information in order to pay the claim. I know it sounds like something that we dreamt, but yeah, no, it's really just that simple. We go ahead and we just make a simple phone call to a provider, get the missing information, and then pay the claim. Whereas, from my understanding, most of the people that'll say that they're a GAP or compete in this kind of marketplace, that's not what happens. What happens is that they deny the claim because they're missing information. They don't make any phone calls. And then what happens is that employee who thought that they were going to have their GAP paid get a denial letter, and then they complain to HR, they complain to the owner, and the owner complains to the broker, and then the broker has to call the company and ask why they denied the claim, and then get the fact that they were just missing information, and then communicate that. It creates this circle of death that we don't want you as a broker or our groups to have to deal with. So if we simply just pick up the phone and get the missing diagnosis code or the missing CPT code that we need, it makes the employee happy, and it makes the employer happy, and it makes the broker happy. So that's why we do it, because we want to keep groups with us forever. And what you'll find is that with GAP, the employees are going to start valuing the GAP more than they value the major med. The major med is a critical illness policy, because essentially it never pays anything, because I got a $7,000 deductible. So therefore, yeah, if I have a heart attack and I'm in the hospital for 2 weeks, yeah, I won't owe $1 million. But what about the fact that I just need to go to my doctor's today? Well, that's a $50 copay. Great. Or $40 copay. How about no copay with GAP? That's the power of GAP. So they start valuing the GAP plan more, because that's who pays. They get EOBs from the major medical plan saying all the time, you owe, you owe, you owe, you owe, you owe. And the only thing they ever get for us is that we paid, we paid, we paid, we paid, we paid. So what do you value more? The major medical plan that maybe paid one claim in the last 10 years for you because you haven't gone over $2,000 in medical expense, and you have a $2,000 deductible, and you've been paying $50, $40 for copays for office visits all along? Or a GAP program that picks up all your expenses, you don't have to put anything out of pocket, you pay your premium, and at the end of the day, when you pay your premium through your employee contributions, you really don't owe anything out of pocket. That sounds like a better plan to me. And that's why we've had so much success, is that in keeping groups, is that that's how the employees start looking at it. The employees start looking at it as the major medical plan, the primary insurance. I don't care who my secondary insurance company is, meaning the major med. As long as I can get providers in the area, my providers in the area, like it's in the network, I don't really care about, you know, what the major medical, all I know is that OptiMed picks it all up. That's all I care. What is my OptiMed benefit? And you'll see that as you start on, and you have these groups that are 4 or 5, 7 years I've been at the company, I still have the first gap case I ever wrote. And I don't think they'll ever leave, because they literally value the gap plan more than they value the major med. They've switched major meds 3 to 4 times in that period. You know, but it doesn't matter. They stick with the gap program because they know that we're the ones paying all of their claims. So broker advantages, obviously stay ahead of your competition like we talked about. Reduces the need for other coverages like critical illness and stuff like that. But really it's a broker differentiator for you guys. And it's a creative solution for staying ahead of your competition. And like I talked about with gap, we pay commission. So therefore, since we pay commission, you should earn additional commission on the same groups that you're writing gap with than you did the previous year because you put the gap in place. Our value adds, we have telephonic doctor office visits that we include at no additional charge. These are all at no additional charge. When you get your gap quote, these things are already included. So patient advocacy and customer service, obviously. Telephonic doctor office visits. There's no copay for the employee to use it. They can use it as many times as they want, and it's no charge to the employee to use the service. We give them a full EAP. We give them a nurse wellness line where they can get information on smoking cessation or getting healthy, dieting. And we issue COBRA. We do COBRA administration for specifically the gap. If you'd like us to COBRA other lines like the major med or dental, there's an additional charge, but we can do it. Securing a proposal is very simple. When you want a proposal, you can just email your rep. You can go to our website. You can email. My suggestion would be to email your rep. They'll give you a link or they'll give you a PDF where you can complete it. We need a census with date of birth and medical tier. And if you can include the summary of benefits for the major medical plan that you want to sell along with our gap program, it'll help your rep kind of pick and choose some plans that they think might be the best fit for you. So if you have any questions, and your sales rep should be the person that you got the invitation from, obviously, for the webinar. If you don't know who they are, my email address is up there. I can help direct you, or you can email sales@optimedhealth.com. You can also call in the sales. It's 800-482-8770. I think sales is option 4. Don't quote me on that. I think it's option 4. But you can go ahead and call in the sales and you'll get connected to a salesperson if you don't know who your rep is. But that pretty much ends the presentation for today. I'm going to see if there's any questions. We don't give full utilization reports as far as gap premium versus gap claims that we paid out. I mean, we have a lot of small groups. It's just a hassle to try to give detailed information, plus then we get into HIPAA stuff. But what we can give you is, like, at the time of renewal, we can give you like percentages. So, you know, their utilization was 70% or 90% or 40%. So we can give you that information, but we don't usually give out typically detailed information like an HRA would. It's a fully insured product. And just like in the fully insured marketplace, you don't really get experience on groups under 100, you know, and even if you do have groups over 100, you know, you get experience, but not detailed experience a lot of times from the fully insured carrier. I mean, the same thing applies here. These are fully insured products. We can give you like rough percentages, but that's about it. If you want a copy of the presentation, you can you can ask your sales representative. They can get you any information as far as brochures, proposals, anything that you need. Your group sales representative here at OptiMed Health is your point in contact to get all that information. And that's it. Those are the only questions. So If you want to, like I said, talk in greater detail about specifically like benefit amounts, what's available in my state, because we have all different types of gap programs to offer you. That's really where you want to talk about the specific group and what you're trying to do and what you're looking at. And that's something to work out, especially if this is your first time in gap, with your sales representative here at OptiMed Health, because they're the best person to walk you through the group. And then once you walk through a few groups with the sales rep, you should be able to now, really grasp onto the concept and go, okay, now I get it. Like the bird in the nest, like you're soaring. At first you're going to need help, and that's what your sales rep here is designed and their job is to do, is to support you in getting you the concept and the tools and everything that you need. What we can't do is go out and get census information that you provide us. I can't go out and get you alternate major medical rates. That's something that you guys have to do. But if you can do those two things, give me the current plan design, give me the current rates, get me a census for the group with date of birth and medical tier, employee only, spouse, family, whatever, for each employee. Then get me alternate quotes with higher out-of-pocket expenses and lower rates. I can kind of direct you, say, okay, here's, if you marry this plan with this is how it's better than this. And once you work through a live experience, I believe it helps tremendously, especially with that first case, to walk through it with somebody who's an expert on it here. And then once you've done it a few times, you'll start getting the concept. But again, thank you to everyone that took the time out today to learn about this product. And again, anything that you need as far as information, feel free to reach out to your representative after the phone call. And thanks again, and hope you have a great day.